Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. Dr. Matt, I'm back from Mexico.
I know, you're looking tan and...
Well, not really tan because I wore a long sleeve shirt the whole time. So for those of you who don't know, me and my family took a little vacation. We got invited to do a reality TV show called The Survivalist.
Right.
And The Survivalist is on BYU TV. You can just download the app. We're in the third season, so I'll be in the third season.
Okay.
And what it does is it's kind of a combination of The Amazing Race meets Survivor. Although nobody's ever voted off of the show, you're out in the wilderness. You're packing around your stuff, your tent, your sleeping bag, your food, your fire starter, everything you need to do. In the years past, it was 2 nights, 3 days. But when we got there, the host, Colin Obrady, who's an amazing guy, and hopefully we'll be able to get him on the show, comes out and goes, "We made some changes." And when you're in the TV world and people say we've made some changes, that's not good.
Okay.
Well, it can be good. And they said, well, now it's going to be 3 nights and 4 days. I'm the only.
You didn't know that till you got there?
No, I had no idea.
Right.
We only watched 2 episodes.
It might have been good to know before you showed up.
That's what all my friends said.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know me, I like the surprise.
Well, there you go.
But here's the truth of it. If I did this research and studied and all that stuff, I'd been living in my head for, as long as it took to get to the show. And so I was just like, I know we're doing this. I've got my family.
You're better spontaneous.
I love spontaneity.
Yep.
And so I'm the only single parent to ever do the show.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it was just me and my 3 kids. Usually it's 2 parents or 2 adults and 2 kids or 3 kids. And you go out on this journey. And the way they set up the show is there's usually some sort of problem in the family that you want to address and hopefully find closure.
It's like wilderness therapy?
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
a little bit.
Kind of like that.
Kind of forcing the family together to deal with an issue?
And either find a positive outcome.
Like work together, because you have to work together for the basics.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And so, our story was me and my daughter, Presley, and it was kind of on the heels of the letter.
Okay.
And, I remember the producer asked Presley, why do you want to do this show? And she goes, I want to replace some of the bad memories with good memories.
Oh, that's a great answer.
And so we were out there going to do that. And I can't tell you what happened on the show. I can't tell you how we did on the show. The show will come out in the fall.
All your kids came home with you, though?
Yeah.
Okay, and you didn't lose anybody?
Didn't lose anybody.
Okay, that's good.
I can tell you that it was 4 days walking in the desert with 30-pound backpacks, up and down hills, through river bottoms. It was
Sounds
insane.
pretty grueling.
So here's I can talk a little bit about it. So my son, who's 10 years old,
and fast.
Yeah,
Very fast.
we found out he's not that fast.
Oh, dang it.
But he was the most excited to do the show.
Yeah.
Well,
It's high adventure. I mean, it sounds amazing when you're 10.
And the tagline I'd been using for the 6 months before we did the show is, "There's going to be a camera crew following around. We're not going to die." You know what I mean?
Just trying to reassure him.
Yeah, just reassure. You know what I mean? Because the unknown was kind of getting to him, and I was like, "Hey, look, there's going to be a camera crew. So whatever it is, I think we can do it.
Okay.
I know we can do it."
Right.
But it was so interesting to see my son figure out who he is and what he's capable of. I mean, because I was talking to the producers, and I was talking to my ex-wife, and I was talking to my girlfriend, and for the most part, Bowden doesn't really know about my alcoholism. He was there, but he was very
he's
young.
pretty young and probably insulated by having 2 older sisters.
Yeah,
and all that.
And so he would hear things, and every once in a while he'll chime in with a thought, but most of it's just regurgitated stuff that he's either heard his sister say or his mom or even me, But he wants to be a part of the conversation, so he'll jump in. But for the most of my son's life, he's been pretty babied.
Well, he's the youngest.
Pretty
right?
coddled. Pretty.
2 older sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we're sitting there talking to the producers, and Bowden thinks that somehow his ability to play video games really well is going to translate into the outdoors.
Right. I think that's a common myth of kids that age. 5th grade, you think you're all set if you play Call of Duty.
And what I'm saying is that I don't think my son Bowden has ever been tested.
Never in a tough situation.
Never in a tough situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's gone through tough situations, but never really had to look inside and dig deep and see what he's made it.
That's probably true for most of our kids nowadays, right? Like, I mean, even if the parents have struggles, most kids, their lives are, pretty chill.
And I'll leave you with this, and I thought it was pretty good. So me and him are walking, and he's having a little bit of a breakdown. And I said, son.
What day, 4 days, which day is this?
Probably third day.
Okay, so he's tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he won't say he was angry. He chooses to say he was annoyed, but he was angry.
We know what that means.
He was angry. And if that kid could have cursed, he would have lit up the heavens with curse words.
Yeah.
But he's just so young and innocent and loving and pure that he doesn't think that way.
Yeah.
And he was just annoyed. And I said, hey, bud, it's okay to cry. But can you cry and walk?
That's such a dad thing to say.
I just said, can you do that?
Yeah.
Because crying is good. And I'll cry with you if you want. But crying's not going to make our problem or our obstacle go away.
It's not going to get us there. Yeah.
So if you need to stop and you need to cry, I'm here with you. And I'll do that. But understand, when we're done crying, we still have to finish what's ahead of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Let's walk. And he walked. And
Wow.
I've never been so proud of my son.
That's
and
pretty
I
cool.
can't wait to show you guys the show.
Well, I'm really excited about it. Everybody I've talked to, people who've asked me about it, I think everyone's excited to see it. But I think that right there is a very cool, personal parenting moment where you can see your kids struggle with things and push through and persevere. I mean, that's what self-confidence is really made of, self-esteem, all those things. So, I mean, that's a beautiful experience.
And the whole experience was absolutely magical. I mean, it really was. And I'll be forever grateful to BYU TV and for people who helped us get on this show and do this journey, this once-in-a-lifetime journey. Half the time that we were going through these obstacles and doing this wonderful, amazing race, I was like, do you guys realize people pay to do this?
Yeah.
I mean, They pay lots of money to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're getting the opportunity to do it for free and maybe win $10,000.
That's awesome.
And
it's
so
very exciting.
It was neat. Everybody down there was great. All the other families were absolutely amazing. And so, wherever you can download apps on your smart TVs, on your phone, whatever, just the BYU TV app and check out Survivalist. And they're getting ready to launch their third season.
I think we're all excited. Let me ask you one question,
Yes.
though. If this is too much giving it away, then that's okay.
Uh-huh.
But was there ever a moment where you had to do that thing where you stand on the poles and then you use the long things with the puff balls on the end and try to hit the other people off?
No.
You never did that?
No.
Oh, well,
No.
I don't know if I'll watch it then.
But
No, I'm just kidding.
We did have to poop in the desert.
Well, I bet. I mean, 4 days. It's hard to avoid.
Which when you've got two princesses, and
man.
you got to tell them,
And let me tell you, I empathize with the princesses on that because there have been some hiking trips that I've just turned down because I'm like, I'm not emotionally up for the pooping in the wilderness. Like, it takes me about a week to gear up before I go.
I can tell you this
Yeah.
because I don't want to put one daughter on blast, but one daughter did not go for 4 days. The other daughter,
You're going to have to tune in to find out which daughter it was.
The other daughter did, and the
Yeah.
one that didn't has been riding the daughter who did every day.
Really?
Just teasing her relentlessly about what happened. So
Wow, okay.
it was really
So,
cool.
When can people sort of like, is it, I think on your Instagram you said it's maybe in the fall?
In the fall.
So it's a little bit of a wait.
Yeah,
but-
so
but
they're going to be down there, and they're filming. We did two shows were going while I was down there, and they were going to be down there for 5 weeks. So they were going to be doing 10 shows.
Oh, okay.
Each episode is two families battling against each other.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And
So we have to wait through the summer, but then
yeah.
so we'll keep listeners posted when we get closer to remind them to, yeah.
And if you want, go check out the host. His name is Colin Obrady. He's the first person to walk solo to Antarctica.
He did what?
He walked solo to Antarctica.
I didn't know you could even do that. You walked there?
Yeah, he walked there. He put all his food in the back of a sled, and he dragged it across whatever it is to get you to Antarctica.
Yeah. I don't know. It's something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was like, whoa,
Wow, that's impressive.
that's intense.
He must be one of those tough survivalist kind of outdoor
He
guys.
summited
huh?
Mount Everest twice.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Once by himself and then once with his wife.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Guys like that are just they're a different breed, right?
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
But his story's amazing. He's got a book. And speaking of books, our guest today has got a book. I can't wait to introduce you to Portia Louder.
We've been having a lot of fun talking with her before we started today.
She's got an amazing story, an amazing message, and she's doing wonderful things. Stick around. The story of Portia Louder coming up next. Hey, welcome back to Project Recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. He's a clinical psychologist. He's a lover of books, and our guest today is a writer of books. Her name is Portia Louder. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So now we've been talking off air, and I've been playing the over-under game with Dr. Matt and Josh of, is it over 4 years or under 4 years that you spent in prison? Now, by first looking at you, I think most people would say she's never spent a day in prison.
Definitely.
You don't have the, I guess I've been to prison look, and that's probably that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I will say that one of us guessed the closest.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Dr. Matt.
Oh yeah, but so I guessed. Well, we'll see what I guessed, but I was being sarcastic. I assumed the answer was 0.
That's what I thought you would say.
Yeah,
But you were just going out.
I was just joking.
Yeah. But you spent how many years in prison, Portia?
I spent 4.5 years in prison.
On a 7-year sentence.
That's right.
We're going to find out how that came to be true. Mm-hmm. But where does the story of Portia Louder begin?
Begins in a small town in southern Utah. I'm the oldest of 7 children, so I grew up kind of out in the country. My parents were very non-traditional, so we played outside, built huts, did all of those things.
So you're like free-range children.
We were. Yeah.
You just kind of got out and, hey.
We did.
But that's how my childhood was too. I mean, I never had my mom screaming out from the front porch, time to come home. It's when the lights came on.
Right.
The street lights came home. It was like, all right, it's time to go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in the sun. I loved the sun, and it was in the water, in the sun, and outside was my life.
And that's kind of the appeal of Southern Utah even today, right? People move down there, live down there because they want to live that sort of unstructured, free-range lifestyle, I think.
Yeah, I think we might have been a little on the more unstructured side than most. I mean, truly, it became difficult, I would say, when I was like 12 or 13 to even deal with school or any kind of structure because, it wasn't something. In fact, my mom pulled all the other kids out and just said, do what you want, study what you want, read what you want. And so...
Oh, wow.
So she homeschooled them?
Kind of.
It doesn't sound like there was a lot of homeschooling.
There wasn't a lot of there was no structure.
Self-directed study.
Self-directed study, and yeah.
Would you consider your parents kind of the hippie generation? Oh, yeah. Like they were more like, do what you want, I'm okay, you're okay, find your path, that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah, for real.
But a lot of hippies wouldn't name their kids after an expensive car.
Oh, it's a Shakespeare character.
Oh,
I was going to say.
I didn't know that. I guess
I'm going to educate you here.
Yeah, okay. Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Well, we'll get you another book to read.
That joke backfired.
Yeah, it's okay.
No, so my parents were great. My mom is like an actress, so she's very creative. And my dad is more the disciplined one. So I would say as the oldest child, I took over as the parent in the home. Because my mom wasn't the parent.
The oldest of 7,
Yeah.
that's a different kind of interesting dynamic.
What is the term you call that? Parentified?
Yeah, parentified,
Okay.
or sometimes they say adultified. But when the oldest child, if the parents are busy or just not into parenting,
right.
The oldest children or some of the older children often take care of the younger ones, and you feel this unnatural responsibility because when you are a parent, then it's okay to and you should act like a parent. But when you're 12, you probably need to be 12. And so, do you feel like that caused any issues for you, like having to take over as the mom of the family?
I think it caused issues, and there was really a difference between my siblings and me, as the oldest. The other thing that happened for me was I got into relationships super young, like 12 or 13. So before addiction came, I need to get married. I mean, I'm the family runner,
So romantically, 6th, 7th grade, you were already
with a lot of older boys, So
how much older?
I would say at 13, I was with a 16-year-old. And then, I mean, by the time I was 15, it was guys that had graduated high school.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it was a problem, and I
well,
started.
It's technically illegal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not just a problem.
Yeah.
Why was that a problem for you?
It wasn't then, but it is now. I mean, I've had the time to go back and look at my life from a different perspective. It was a problem for me because I could see how codependent I became, and I just didn't know my own worth. And it was a real challenge because I turned to addiction, but I would say even more than addiction, it was like attention. I need a man in my life. And I ended up pregnant at 17. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start dating at 12 or 13, that's
right.
bound to happen.
Yep.
I would say that, or I'm going to ask you, do you feel like because of that undue responsibility of being sort of parentified and taking care of younger siblings and feeling like a mini adult, do you feel like dating these older boys was, obviously for attention, but do you think it was also sort of an act of rebellion? Like, hey, I just need to break free from being responsible. And that's the issue with being parentified or adultified at a young age, is you're not ready for that kind of, day-to-day responsibility. And so a lot of kids end up acting out in either self-destructive or sort of beyond their years sort of activities. So drugs, alcohol, sex, leaving school, all those kinds of things are pretty common.
Yeah, I think so. I think I was frustrated. I honestly just wanted to go. I wanted to get out, and I did.
Yeah.
At 17, I moved out. I moved into a low-income apartment and had my son. And looking back now, I'm like, gosh, that was daunting. I didn't really see a future for myself. I'm living in this small town, and I just figured this was the life I would have. And it didn't end there. I got pregnant again and had another child. So, by the time I'm 21, I have 2 children. I'm a single mother. And it was.
Did you ever marry any of those?
I did.
Fathers?
I married them both.
Oh, okay.
I was married less than a year both times. So, I mean, I really racked up some poor decisions. And I remember my dad saying, "You're like a freight train. Like, I can't stop you. You're going to go whatever direction you want, and there's no reasoning with you," which was true, And that is when my addiction really took off. Do
you remember the first time you tried drugs or alcohol?
I remember I was 13 the first time I tried alcohol. Alcohol wasn't my jam. Like, I wasn't hooked on alcohol. I liked to party and I liked the fun. But the first time I took a pain pill, an opiate, and I remember being 21 years old, I had all of the guilt and responsibility of a mother not doing it right. I mean, in fact, my son asked me when he was going to get a dad that he could keep. Like, it's
heartbreaking.
It was really heartbreaking. And I had been prescribed some Percocet for headaches. Never abused them, just had them in my cupboard. And I remember taking one, and it just felt like it filled the emptiness. It was like immediately I thought, this is the answer to my problems, and then I thought I got to do whatever I can to keep taking these.
You might or might not be surprised of how many people who have sat in that exact same seat who described exactly what you described about taking their first pain pill, and it was like either it filled the emptiness, it made everything make sense. It was the missing piece, whatever it was. But they said for the first time in their life, that was the first time they could breathe.
Yep.
And not feel, and whatever it is, it does to you. But you remember it that vividly.
Oh yeah.
I think it's interesting that you point out that you were 21, you had 2 kids, you were feeling like, maybe I'm not doing everything the right way. So I think what's implied in that statement is there was a lot of emotional turmoil going on in your life. And it's interesting with opiates, obviously they're originally intended to be just pain management, right? The block pain receptors. But I think they for especially for people who become addicted to them. But even if, I know I've felt like this when I've had them before, it's like this emotional analgesic. It just makes everything feels okay. And I had a surgery one time and I took, I don't remember what it was, Percocet or Lortab or something. And I remember just like laying back into a bed of marshmallows with no care in the world. And if you have a propensity towards addiction, you can see how really it's not really the pain that you're managing, the physical pain, it's the emotional turmoil. And it sounds like for you, that was you needed a reprieve from that, but this was a little much.
Yeah, I think for me, about that time, it was shortly before that my dad ended up transferring up here to Salt Lake from that small town. And I had moved up here, and I actually got a job that I felt pretty good about, which helped me build some self-esteem, and thought that I could get it together, but it wasn't happening. I mean, I really just had that internal issue, and about that time is when I thought, this is the answer, the pills.
Well, part of the issue there, just for the listener, is we go through emotional and psychological stages of development just like we go through physical stages of development. And it's important to get through the whole stage to be ready for the next one.
Right.
And there are different theories about that. But in general, I think most people would agree. And adolescence, childhood and adolescence are very, very important in developing a sense of self, your identity, your self-esteem, confidence, your hope for the future. And when you don't have a chance, when certain things take that away from you, like becoming a parent of younger siblings, by having children when you're technically still a child yourself,
right,
that robs you of having enough time and space to have that personal development. So I could see that even though by the time you were 21 and you had a job that you were starting to feel really good about, there was probably still, you just hadn't had time to develop who you were. And so you have that you're kind of like a person in two different worlds without your feet on the ground.
Right. Yeah, and unfortunately things got quite a bit worse before they got better. So it yeah.
So after you took that first pill and you said maybe this is the answer,
Mm-hmm.
did it escalate pretty quick, or did you kind of gradually get addicted to pills?
No, I was using every day right away. And it took me about 6 months to realize, because I'm a pretty brassy girl, like I'm the kind of girl that's going to just fight my way through a situation, that I couldn't quit. You know, it made me really physically sick when I would try to quit. And it wasn't that I wanted to quit, but I was scared that I couldn't. Like that scared me.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
How long were you using before you realized it might be dangerous for me to quit these?
About 6 months. Yeah.
And that seems pretty quick.
Does it?
I don't know. I look back at my addiction when I started drinking at 14 and didn't quit until I was 45. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a long span of time. Now, I knew throughout a good chunk of that I had a problem. You know what I mean? But 6 months seems like a pretty small window to be like, oh, wow, these guys got me.
But it definitely escalated after that. And I did not know that I had a problem other than just I was physically addicted to them, which I thought I could handle. In fact, I did quit taking them and went to the emergency room because I was having a lot of problems with it. And basically what happened is I just fought it, and then I ended up getting pregnant again. And at that point, I was terrified because I'm a single mother with 2 kids that I'm not doing right by. And, I wasn't religious growing up. My parents were members of the LDS Church, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I didn't go to church pretty much from 12 on. And I hadn't prayed for a long time, but when I found out I was pregnant, I prayed because I didn't think that I could do it. I was working as a photographer and had 2 kids, and I really felt a lot of strength and comfort and knew that it was the right thing to do was give the baby up for adoption. And so I did that.
That was your third child.
That was my third child, yeah. I found an amazing family. I met with several different attorneys and went down that road. And I was fortunate through the pregnancy. They were right there with me. And I knew I was doing the right thing. Probably didn't know that up to that point. I really hadn't made any choices that were best for everyone else versus just me, or what I thought was best for me at that point. So it was a sacrifice. In fact, I remember my mom even saying, I'll raise the baby. And I remember thinking, are you crazy? Like, you didn't even raise me. I love my mom, but that was not the point of what I was doing. I wanted to give this child a better life, and I knew I wasn't capable of doing that right then. So
some would say that's the ultimate sacrifice.
You know what? I remember the adoptive father telling me that. He goes, I have so much admiration for you. He goes, what you're doing is one of the greatest sacrifices that I can think of, except to give your own life. He's like, I'm just inspired by your willingness to do this. And It was a really good experience, but after I had his name's David, after I had him, the emptiness was greater than anything I'd ever experienced. I didn't get counseling or therapy. I didn't even know how to begin, and I really took it to a whole new level with drugs. I ended up on street drugs, and
Would you say you were experiencing postpartum depression? I mean,
I think I was experiencing, your life is like I had not dealt with any of the emotions of everything that was going on, and I just checked out.
Well, freight trains, as your dad would say, just plow ahead, straight ahead. And
Right.
I'm guessing that from that young age, even with having your first two kids, you were just kind of in go ahead mode, go
Right.
forward mode. It sounds like something different happened when you had this third pregnancy where you did slow down, you had some self-reflection.
Yeah.
Like you said, you prayed for help and inspiration, and you, for the first time, in your words, made a decision that wasn't just what you thought was best for you, but was really best for everyone, including this new baby.
Right.
And I'm guessing that's what the adoptive father was sensing. He's like, she's really doing something selfless here.
Yeah.
But that do you feel like that contributed to this depression you felt afterwards?
But when you think about it, in your head, and I'm just playing it out if it was me, I'm doing everything that's right. I'm prayed and all this stuff, and I'm doing it, and I feel the worst I've ever felt and the emptiest I've ever felt. And why am I doing good things if it's making me feel this way?
That's true. I did. I mean, I remember feeling pretty desperate for something to fill the emptiness. But something happened at that point that was life-changing and still is, and that is that I met the man that I'm married to now. And I really don't think that would have happened had I not chosen to give this child up for adoption. I mean, I was a mess, and he wasn't, so it's still kind of miraculous that he said, this girl has something I'm interested in, and he told me, he's like, I think you're amazing, but you're the scariest person I've ever been around.
You're the definition of hot mess.
Yeah, he had just graduated college and never been married or anything. And he says he fell in love with me. I mean, I fell in love with him. I remember when I first saw him, I thought, this guy, like he had these amazing blue eyes and this goodness about him that I thought, wouldn't it be amazing? I actually met him 8.5 months pregnant with that child I gave up for adoption.
Wow.
Yeah,
how do you meet somebody at 8.5 months pregnant?
I was
like
at my
that?
There's not
parents'
an app
house.
for that, is
no,
there?
Oh, there's
I
got
wish.
to be an app for that.
No, he was in college with my sister. And
They
he
call
came,
it bundle.
That's pretty clever. That's pretty
There you
clever.
go.
They should, because it's not an easy thing to go through. But
Wow.
but anyway, yeah, my sister was dating his friend, and they were all in college together, and they stopped by my parents' house, and I'm laying there pregnant on the couch, and we just met, and we both felt something, but he kept on rolling down the road. And then when I had the baby, my sister and her boyfriend came over to the hospital to see me, and he just was really emotional. He's like, it really hurts me that you've had to go through so much. What can I do to support you? Which is pretty kind, right?
Yeah.
And I said, you can set me up with that really cute guy that came by, And so we went out. And again, I don't think he thought that he would. He's like, I don't think I could take that. It took us 2.5 years of dating before he took that plunge. So,
Wow.
and it wasn't easy street. He's been through a lot with me, but we really love each other, and it was really worth it. Well, it was for me. I don't know about him. You'd have to ask him.
We're going to
I'm
find
sure
out
it
a
is.
little more about Portia's story in just a bit. She's amazing. She's got a book out. It's called Living Louder, the Portia Louder story. You can check it out. We'll have a link below this. We'll be right back with Project Recovery right here on KSL. Welcome back to Project Recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. Our guest today is Portia Louder. Portia, you just talked about how you met your husband, and the situation was you were 8 months pregnant. At this point, were you addicted to opioids still?
I was fortunate through the pregnancy. I was able to not use, so that was a blessing. My addiction progressed quite a bit after I had the baby, so it wasn't easy to quit, but I was able to do that. I was pretty honest with the doctors too, so they helped me wean down off of it when I found out I was pregnant. And yeah.
So after you have the baby and you give it up for adoption, I believe his name was David, right?
That's correct.
And you met this love of your life, but you say you've got this emptiness inside,
Yeah.
and you didn't know what to do. Did you turn to drugs to fill that emptiness? Is that your coping mechanism? Is that what you went to?
Yeah. Yeah. My addiction really progressed. I mean, they prescribed Percocet after I had the baby, and then I've had a back injury, so it isn't a problem for me to get drugs if I want to get drugs. And so I just continued to use. Chad and I dated for a few years, and I was working, and, you know, he got to know my kids. He actually moved to Idaho for a job. And so I don't know that he would have continued dating me or married me if he would have known how dysfunctional my life was, but we just saw each other on the weekends, you know, and...
you could put together a weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it was, really.
But I say that as an addict, and most addicts can put themselves together for short periods of time, whether it's a family party,
right.
A graduation, something that and we do that for two reasons. One, so we can share everybody in our family that we're not complete mess ups.
Right.
And so the next time they come to us, we messed up. He was like, "What are you talking about? Remember, I was fine at the family party. I was great at Thanksgiving."
Right.
I mean, but that's manipulation. That's the way your brain works.
Right.
And so it was probably partying Monday through Thursday.
Yeah.
Pull it together for a Friday, Saturday with Chad, and then and I'm not, don't want to put words in your mouth, but I've done that where you're counting time before he leaves so you can get the next fix.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was, I mean, unfortunately for me, I'm a pill popper, right? So, you know, I could always just pop a pill from the person. I think it's so insidious for that reason. I mean, I actually look at the girls that shoot heroin and everything else, and we're using the same substance, but they hit a bottom different than me because I pretend everything's okay. Mm-hmm. And I see that even with women now, you know, Adderall in the morning and Ambien at night. And I'm like, I could never do that as an addict. I can't do it, you know? But at that point in time, I had a substance for everything. So, yeah, it got worse.
And so you said eventually it led you to street drugs. How does one go from the innocence of popping pills to buying drugs on the street?
Well, for me, it went like this. And this is, I really put Chad through it. But we decided to get married. And I just said, I'm out. Like, after 2.5 years, I have kids. He had a hard time committing, understandably. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm done. And then he said, well, let's just get married. And I think I was terrified. I mean, I've been married a few times and I failed on every level, right? And so my cousin, who'd just gotten out of jail, came and lived with my parents for a while, and he was a meth addict. And I tried it. And I had been using pills for so long that I immediately felt a high that I hadn't experienced. And so that happened right about the time we got married. And poor Chad, you know, it wasn't a few months before he went, whoa, what have I gotten myself into? I mean, we move in together, we're living together now and have these children, we're married. And he's like, I mean, Chad's as normal as it gets. He's not an addict. He's just like, what? And I saw you on the weekend. You weren't like this. What's going on? You know, and he left me. And he, you know, rightly so.
How long were you together before?
I think we were together for about 6 months. And then he left and I moved back home. And at that point, I started going to the dealer's house. And other
than like, maybe I just don't want to suppose.
Yeah.
So like, what was Chad experiencing? Like, why? So you guys get married. He doesn't really understand the extent of your addictive process. Mm-hmm. Right about the time you get married, you try this new drug called meth.
And
I don't know if the kids have heard about that, but it's kind of dangerous.
Don't use it.
And
it's terrifying.
And you start that up about the same time you get married.
Yeah.
And those 6 months sound pretty rough.
They were terrible.
Like what did he see change in you? What was your change?
Well, I mean, I quit my job and kept telling, I had all these grandiose ideas of things I was going to do, and I'm like stealing his stuff and taking it over to get drugs.
So you're just taking his stuff and selling it.
Yeah.
And you're getting high.
Yeah. And I'm getting high, and I'm kind of like, I mean, I'm in the crazy zone now.
Are you manic? Are you,
Yeah.
And
staying up all the time, not sleeping. I mean,
tiling the third bathroom. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's meth.
Yeah, it's all bad.
I remember terrible. When I first moved to Salt Lake, and I had a roommate, and he had tried meth, and I came home from doing an overnight on a radio shift, and he was cleaning the vents.
Yeah.
And he was like, this stuff is amazing. And I remember saying,
you're looking at him going,
I don't ever want to do a drug that makes me feel like cleaning's a good thing. You know what I mean? That doesn't sound like a fun drug.
It's the opposite of a good time.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But it really messes with you mentally and spiritually, I mean, I have been working at a treatment center the last 2 years, so I see girls coming in off meth and off heroin, and there's just differences. But the meth throws people into psychosis.
Sure.
And so, I mean, that's what happened to me, you know?
And there's a diagnosis called drug-induced psychosis, and they'll usually name the type of drug a person's on. But, you know, a person can come into the hospital and we do an evaluation and we realize they're psychotic, meaning they're seeing and hearing things that aren't there. They're having delusions. And then we have to rule out, is this a natural process like schizophrenia?
Right.
Or have they sort of created this psychotic process through their drug addiction? And meth is a very common culprit for that.
Yeah.
So Chad decides he wants out.
Yeah, understandably so. And so I move home and things get progressively worse. I continue to use drugs. In fact, I'm gone all the time. I'm going, you know, to the west side to buy drugs, to hang out. Saw some things I never thought I would see. Mm-hmm. And I came home late one night and I remember feeling like I was in a deep hole. There's a couple times in my life, but I remember feeling like, I mean, how many times has this girl been married? And at my age, I just had so much heavy stuff on me. And sometimes there wasn't enough drugs to use. And when I did use the drugs, I felt anxious all the time. Sometimes I'd get really high and I would plan out my future. Never worked. I'm never going to use again. I'd make a whole list, you know. But this particular night I came home and my son, who was about 9, my oldest son, had been looking out the window crying all night. My mom had been sitting there with him. And so when I walked in the house, she said, "I'll never understand what it would take for you to change, because this little boy, all he cares about is you. That's all he wants." And she goes, "I give up." She just looked at me and she goes, "I give up. You must be hopeless, because if this doesn't matter to you, what would?"
Wow.
Yeah, it was devastating. I picked my son up. He's 9, so he's a big boy. And I walked downstairs and I laid on the floor and I sobbed. And I begged God. I said, "Take this from me. Anything is better than this. If I live my whole life never happy again, I'm okay. Just give me the strength to quit using this drug. Please. I don't want to hurt the people I love anymore." And my little boy, he's like, "Mom, come look in the mirror. You're so beautiful." You know, this sweet little kid. And I'm like feeling like the ugliest person in the world. And I committed to never use again. And I walked over the next day to somebody that I thought in our neighborhood could help me, and I asked for help. And he was scared because I was like not looking so good. And he said, "I'm going to call someone from the AA meeting," which I wasn't really an alcoholic, but that's the only person he knew to call. And he sent me to some meetings. And they were really honest with me. They said, "You're a train wreck. You need to sit here and listen," you know. One guy told me I might be the most selfish person he'd ever met. What a blessing that was, to have people speak truth to me. And
Did you resist that truth, or were you in a place where you're kind of...
I did not trust myself.
Yep.
I didn't think any thought I had was true. And rightly so, I'd made so many bad decisions. I was probably 26. And I remember seeing a guy in the front of the room at that meeting who had 2 years clean, and he had done a lot of the same things I had done. And listening to him and seeing the light he had in his eyes blew my mind. I'm like, whatever he's doing, that's when I knew I had a serious problem, but there was also a solution for it. I knew it was bigger than just popping pills and getting detox. I knew what I had was something that they had the solution to. And I would have been asked him, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Take this big book and read it, you know, and work those steps. You can get better." And I went to those meetings every day. I did. I didn't go to treatment.
Would you consider that an epiphany in your life, like a moment of insight when you saw this guy and you're like, I want to have what he has?
It changed everything, because I knew that if he had the problem I had once, if he could share the same stories, but he was clean, there was hope for me. And I was willing to go to any length at that point.
But you said it right there, and we've talked about it so much on this podcast, how powerful hope is.
Yeah.
You talk about being in the darkest spot of your life, lying on that floor to your 9-year-old crying baby boy.
Right.
And you thought life would never get better. You prayed to God. You said, "I don't care if I'm happy the rest of my life, just take this burden away from me."
Right.
And you couldn't see a way out until you went to that 12-step meeting and saw somebody who's in a similar situation who is now living and thriving, and it gave you hope.
Right.
Hope is so powerful.
So powerful. Yeah. And there's been a few times in my life where it's given me the strength, for sure. And here's the thing that is amazing. Life gets beautiful when you're sober. I mean, it was 9 months hard.
Amen. Life
It
does get beautiful when you get sober.
Right. But, I remember when I walked in and I made this little tiny list of what I hoped for. And it was like little tiny list, just to be able to survive sober. I couldn't remember life sober. Couldn't remember, or I didn't even know what life looked like. But I went to the meetings. I did what they said. I started getting honest. What blew my mind was that I had never learned how to have any kind of character and integrity. I'm like, this program teaches you these basic skills, No wonder I was such a miserable person. And everything changed. Like 9 months in, I remember exactly where I was. I was driving in the car, the window rolled down, felt the sun on my face, and thought, I feel free. Maybe for the first time in my life, I feel joy and hope. But it took a good 9 months of craving drugs and thinking about drugs. Like it wasn't a quick fix. But life got way better than that little tiny list that I hoped for.
It's crazy, huh?
It's amazing. It's hard and it's amazing.
Yeah. So 9 months later, you're driving down the road, sun is on your face, you feel free for the first time in your life.
Yeah. And my husband and I decide right before our divorce is final to get together and talk. And he says, I love you. And I tell him the truth, which is all ugly stuff. I'm like, guess what I did? I stole your this, I did that. He was shocked. He's like, just the truth? I'm willing to stick it out. Like if you can tell me the truth, I can trust you. Because trust is the foundation of a healthy relationship, right?
100%.
Yeah. So I tell him the truth, and we get back together and we build this amazing life. I mean, we bought a house. I started a photography business. Chad's career was going well. And I started showing up in my kids' lives. Like I remember the first time I went to a school activity and I'm sitting there with all the moms going, oh my gosh, I'm a mom. I'm a good one. I thought they don't know. Like I was tearful because I thought, man, you have no idea what kind of a crappy mom I've been. And I'm right here showing up. Like I was helping in my kids' classes. I'm doing the real thing, being a mom. And it was amazing. And I had 4.5 years of that kind of a life.
Did we skip the part where you go to prison?
No, we got to get there. We better hurry because what happened, I had 4.5 years clean. My business went crazy and Chad and I had more kids and I had a back surgery and relapsed. And about that time, I thought a really good idea was to get involved in real estate because I was so busy as a photographer. Real estate was the answer. I was going to get out of, shooting so much. And I just got involved in flipping lots, but eventually I got involved in these equity deals where I was in the middle and I would get appraisals that were higher than the houses were worth. And I'm popping pills and it gets ugly.
Before we get to that, I don't want you to gloss over it. You go, I had back surgery and I got back into pills.
Yeah.
Was it as easy as that? I mean, was it as simple as that? I mean, or did you have to talk yourself into trying it again? Or
No.
did it just seem pretty easy?
I think I just had 4.5 years clean and thought I could do it. But I was also way too busy to go to meetings, right? So for me, meetings help. I wasn't putting the energy into my recovery that I needed to. I mean, I was just so busy. And then the other thing that I think happened is I quit being honest with myself. Like I quit holding myself accountable. That's such a scary place for me. I just started telling myself, and as soon as I took the pills, this is the thing that scares the crap out of me because I've used them so much in my life. They tell me this is my normal way of being and that I can handle it, that I can succeed. It's not meth. I would never see meth or touch meth again. From that point on, it scared the crap out of me. It's pain pills. I can do this. I'm not hooked to like heavy pain pills. I need to because I have photo shoots and I have a new baby and my back is out and I'll wean off later. And then I go to a recovery meeting and I don't admit I relapsed, because everyone's like, oh, Portia, she'll be your sponsor. Sure, I'll be your sponsor. I'm just popping pills on the side. I mean, I just wasn't honest with myself or the people around me.
Let me ask you this. So when, if working with somebody who's had a history of pain pill addiction and then they go in for a surgery or to have a baby or whatever it might be, oftentimes the counselor will coach them like, hey, this is important to bring up to your doctor, and so that you can talk about a plan, and if you really need those, how to get, switch over to Tylenol, that sort of stuff. Did you do that, or did you kind of keep that on the down low so that the doctors didn't, doing the surgery were a little bit in the dark?
Yeah, I totally didn't do that. I mean, I have a procedure coming up, and the first thing I told the doctor is, we have to make this as minimal as possible because I can't take any narcotics, right?
Yeah.
Because I have too much to live for.
That's your attitude now,
yeah, but
and
then
you talk with the doctor, but not then.
No.
Do you think that was part of the addict brain?
Yeah, I think it was part of the addict brain, and I think I was just so overwhelmed with what I had going on that the pills just were welcome as soon as I took them,
And there's also some shame that goes along with that. You don't want to admit to your doctor, or
not anymore.
No, not even. No,
but back then,
I mean, back then, yeah. You know,
I think currently that's. That's
for me, not anymore.
For a lot of folks, that's a big thing to overcome, is being willing to say, I've had a history with addiction.
I'm an addict.
Yeah, prison wipes that all away. You got
so let's get to that. So you get out of photography, which is a very successful business,
right?
And you get into real estate, and you're flipping homes, back and forth. You said somewhere in the middle, it got a little blurry and a little
right. Yeah, I remember the first time someone showed me like a $3 million. Well, the house appraised for $3 million. They said that I could buy it for like 1.4, 1.5, and then sell it to someone and make a couple $100,000, and they would pull the equity out. I remember looking at him and going, "Why don't you sell the house for $3 million if it appraises for $3 million? Oh no, that's not what it is. It's an equity deal. You know, the bank knows about it, which they did, and we just send the appraisal over, and they tell us how much they'll lend. But the house isn't really worth that. You couldn't sell it for that. You can sell it for like 1.6 or whatever." And I thought he was smoking crack. I'm like, I would never do that. That's like, for one, why would you take more debt out on a house than what you're paying for? It just didn't make sense. But I started buying lots, and I had hard money loans and everything else. And so and I'm still popping pills. And a few months later, after looking at those deals, I got in on them. Yeah.
And so just to be clear, because I don't think Casey's a smart financial guy, but you have to talk down to me a little bit. So even though there was an appraisal and the bank knew, this was sort of a shady way of.
Yeah, it's shady.
Yeah, and was it technically illegal?
That's what I went to prison for. So.
Okay, so
but they called it mortgage fraud because they said there was deception to the bank. So my victims are actually banks. The bottom line is that I gave a value to the bank that wasn't legit, or I would give, whether people are aware of it or not, I, at this point, have had to come to terms with my integrity was not in line. I made decisions that when someone tells you that a house is worth, I paid extra money for higher appraisals too.
Okay. So you were kind of manipulating the system, fudging the numbers.
I was.
And eventually that caught up with you.
Correct.
So let's find out how this all comes crashing down on you. You're married. You guys are doing wonderful.
How many kids at this point?
We had 4 kids, and the FBI showed up when I had a new baby, so we ended up having 5. We have 5 together. So I'm going through a pregnancy, hearing about
5 together, so 7 altogether?
No. We have 3 together. Chad adopted those kids. Yeah, so he raised the kids.
So you've got a baby, and the FBI comes knocking on your door.
Terrifying. It's so awful. And I'm thinking to these guys, let me just tell you what I've already been through to get here. You can't take this from me. I've lost too much. I built myself up from, the single mother. I went through addiction. I'm falling on some hard times, but let's work it out, I think I had a conversation like that. And they looked at me and looked at Chad and said, "Hey, you're going to need to decide which side you're on." They say that to my husband. Because
those FBI guys are really like soft and nice and easy to work with, right?
No, it's so scary. They're like, "You're going to have to pick sides because we can indict you on a conspiracy. So like, if you want to help us," and I'm just like, "You're trying, like, it's war. You can't take my family. You just can't, and I handle it as bad as someone can. Like, I hire lawyers and more lawyers and spend every ounce of retirement, anything we have to fight this over years, and eventually it doesn't work. Eventually I end up in a courtroom to be sentenced, and I'm facing 7 years. There's plenty that happened in there, but I don't think the podcast goes all day. So we'll just get to the part where I'm sitting in a courtroom. The courtroom is a place where things get real. Like, there's no way for you to deny it anymore. It's the most sterile and lonely place I've ever been in my life. And
you've been in prison.
Yeah, I'd rather wait. Nobody wants to go back into a courtroom. Everybody's traumatized by that experience. When you're sitting in the courtroom, I'm looking back at my family, who seem very far away, because the reality that I am going to get the maximum sentence, I realize that sitting in the front of the courtroom. And someone walks in and says, "The United States of America versus Portia Louder, all rise." And I'm like, holy crap. I am me against them. Like, there's no chance here, And the sorrow that I felt for dragging my family through this and what I've done, it just wasn't real to me until I walked in there. It just wasn't. And it was extremely painful. Again, I said a prayer and just said, "Please give me strength to do this." Because I honestly thought I might lose my mind. Like, this is too hard. because I had not even accepted that I was going to go to prison. And so the judge asked me if I had anything to say, and I got up and apologized. And I said, I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to do today, and I probably deserve it, but I would ask you to show some mercy to my family, which I was hoping I'd get. Maybe he'd minimize a little bit. What ended up happening was he gave me the maximum, which was 7 years and 84 months to be exact. And then he said, let's take her into custody today, which like have the marshals chain her and shackle her, which for a white collar crime is unusual. And that's when I said, can you help me understand why you would want to do that today? And he said, because I fear that you might take your own life because you haven't accepted the seriousness of your situation. And my husband got up and he said, please don't do this to Portia. He like advocated for me, did a way better job than my lawyer, by the way. And he said, our family needs this time together to say goodbye to her. And the judge agreed. So I still think I should have never bothered paying the lawyers, And we walked out of there, and life has never been the same since. I mean, I literally got in the car with Chad. I couldn't speak for probably an hour. I just felt such sorrow looking out the window, just the thought of what I had done. And Chad just kept saying, what can I do? How can I help you? I'm so sorry. And I just thought, must be the worst person to have done this. I just got the maximum sentence, How could I have done this? Just that whole weight of it came down on me. And I remember thinking, why is everyone driving around still acting like life is normal? Because it's not. Like everything just changed. And I went home that day. I had 8 weeks before I said goodbye to my kids and my husband. And all I cared about was watching my kids sleep, driving them to school. I had a business, an eBay business. I said, Chad, I'm done with that. I don't care. It seemed so silly to me that I cared about money because it was completely unimportant to me. The time I had left was all that mattered. And we spent that time together. I started writing actually on a blog at that point because I was just in so much pain. And I mean, it was on the 10 o'clock news, so it's not really like a secret. And I just thought, I'm just going to share how sorry I am and ask people to support my husband and kids because they need all the help they can get. And that's when things turned. Like I asked the principal and the therapists in their schools, please help my kids through this, my neighbors. And people were very kind. They really were when I asked for help. And then I went to prison. And most painful thing I've ever experienced, going through that sentencing and then saying goodbye to my kids. I write about it in my book. And then I walk into a difficult life.
8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, I guess you could look at that as a blessing to be able to have that time, of course, to do all the things you just described. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I could see how that's a long time to anticipate having to do maybe the worst thing in your life, which is say goodbye to your family and go to prison. Mm-hmm. Did you at any point during that time have suicidal thoughts like the judge had worried about?
No, they requested that I meet with a therapist, which was great because the therapist said something to me that changed everything once I got to prison. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but I remember telling him, I can't imagine how I could go to prison for 7 years. I can't do it. I can't get my head around it. And he said, Portia, it will be hard to go to prison for 7 years. He said, but imagine being here in your addiction for 7 years. He goes, you're going to be disconnected from your kids, your family. What kind of a life would you have if you were using for 7 years? He goes, in prison, you could become an amazing person. You're not using drugs. You could study, you could read, you could work on yourself. He goes, so, there are some benefits to going to prison versus staying out here using drugs. He
helped you reframe the experience instead of seeing it as just the end of the world.
But it didn't help then.
Yeah. At the moment, you're like, shut it. I don't want to hear that.
But when I got to prison and I was trying to pull myself out of the most devastating experience of my life, I walked around the track and I said those words out loud. You are going to become an amazing person. That's all you have left. That's the only choice you have. Your family depends on you. You have that option. Quit feeling sorry for yourself. And I made a list of things that I could do. And, a big part of that was full ownership of my life. When I finally got to a place where I could quit saying, poor me, I got screwed, the government did this, and say, you did this to yourself. 100%. I found freedom and power and, so his strength later on, I was just like, those things mattered when you're sitting in a, cinder block world, everyone wearing the same khaki color, watching TV, and you're like, what am I going to do? I got 7 years of this and I hurt so much all I can see is my children's faces. And I want to die. And I never want to use drugs again, but I don't trust myself anymore. I'm so scared, And I probably needed 4.5 years for my brain to get right.
So what kind of things did you do in prison?
I started out as a teacher, and it helped me a lot because I was like, all right, I'm going to rewrite a curriculum. I'm going to create something that will help these women. I walked a lot. And
What did you teach them? I'm just curious.
Well, the first part, I taught a class called Explaining Your Conviction, and it was like a support group. And we would come together and talk about how traumatized we were. And we would each share our experience, and also I would help them reframe their conviction because I'm like, well, you guys sound like hardcore criminals, but let's word this in a way that isn't so hard for people to understand. Like, well, let's simplify it down because I knew with my charge, like money laundering, wire fraud, mail fraud, it sounded like I was like a crime boss. But when I simplified it down and said, I got involved in real estate and, I did some transactions that were illegal I could simplify it down without throwing all the big words out. So I helped with that, taught them how to write resumes. I worked in reentry. I actually created a photography class. It's the first they ever had, and taught them all the fundamentals and the elements. And then they liked it. The teachers liked it. And they said, okay, well, let's use the camera, which was a big deal. And the girls loved that. Everyone signed up for that. So that was cool.
What did you do in prison to help you with your addiction?
Well, my first year was in California, and that was just me getting my head above water. Then I got transferred. I got to go through Con Air, which you do. You get like black boxed and chained and shackled. And
I saw the movie.
Nick Cage.
You can read about it if you read it. Yeah, I had the same experience. I was like, whoa. So I got transferred to Minnesota. That was, I was in the SHU actually for a few months. That's kind of crazy too.
What's the SHU?
It's isolation, segregation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you learn how to like slide notes under each other's doors and stuff. But I really didn't start dealing with my addiction until I got to the next prison. And that's when I spent about 6 months just crying. Like I just had to sit outside under a tree and just detox all the sadness and the pain. And I created a whole new curriculum for that prison of classes. We used like Viktor Frankl's book and other books and wrote, helped people learn how to write mission statements and set goals. I took accountability. And that was a big one. I worked that step where you write, an inventory, and it took months for me to really own my life. And then they offered me a treatment program, which I didn't want to take. It just made me mad. I thought it's a government program. I don't want to take this program. But they gave me a year off my sentence, so I took the program.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, they made me a leader in that program. And in prison, it's not fun to call people out because, you're stuck there with them at night.
Yeah,
so
they may not appreciate it later. Yeah.
Yeah. I had one girl threaten me. She goes, She just told me to watch my back, and I said, you know what? How dare you threaten me if you said you were my friend in the beginning? And she's like, sorry. I learned how to be fairly assertive. I taught boundary classes and stuff while I was in that program. So I had all these, and then I met women whose lives were so much worse than mine, such hard circumstances, who were amazing. So white collar criminals have a harder time taking ownership of their life. But the drug dealers, they're like, I'm here because I was dealing drugs. I'm like, they have it figured out. Like they're owning it. And so I started hearing their stories and learning from them and met some amazing friends. I write about that too. And in the end, I have a lot of love and compassion for the women that I met in prison. They changed my life. And I would say by the end of so I did my first 4 years in a high security prison. And I loved it. I didn't think I did at the time. I was mad about it, but in the end I did. And then I went to a camp.
Is that unusual for a white collar, embezzlement sort of person to end up in a high, isolation? I'm sitting there like, this doesn't sound.
It's correct.
Like,
they hit me with the prescription fraud charge at the end, and that threw me and put a management variable on me, and then that threw me. So I had no points in terms of the seriousness of my crime, but they threw me in high security, which was fine.
It seems. What do you mean, which is fine? That sounds horrible.
It started out that way, but I had so many cool experiences because I was at that type of a prison. Like the opportunities to serve were way better. It was a bigger prison. Like camp life is really boring. When I finally got to a camp at the end of my sentence, I was like, oh man, I'm glad I did my time.
So you think that because it was harsh, and you were around people that were maybe harsher than your life, and it forced what? insight forced?
I grew so much. My strength and my resilience and my the power that I had in my life to take ownership and to move forward. I started visualizing a different future. We were like sisters. I don't know how to explain it. Like, everyone thinks it's just so awful. What you see on TV is not the case. Like, we were like family and sisters that helped each other
probably
out.
Bonding, right? I mean, it's such a tough situation. Hard. It's so hard. If it was easy, like the camps, you don't really
have the same connection
to bond with people.
We're like major sisters, yeah.
But you always say, Dr. Matt, on this podcast that true growth comes from struggle.
It does. And that's, I think, exactly what Portia is saying is because she had to struggle more, she had to dig deep. Now, not everybody does, unfortunately.
But
you probably came across many who didn't.
But I knew that. And I mean, it was my big thing. There were a couple things. One, I had decided I was going to become an amazing person because that's what the therapist said my options were, you know?
Right.
But two, I did not want prison to take the good inside of me. I just didn't. I was terrified of that.
So you were determined.
I was
You
very
were determined to make this work for you, and you did.
Yeah, I had a beautiful experience. By the end, I literally was like we talked a little bit about this. Like, I wasn't. I thought, I am happy. I have 4 T-shirts. I have 1 pair of shoes and a pair of shorts and 1 pair of sweats. My life is beautiful. I eat tuna fish, apples, and almonds. I drink water and I walk every day. I meditate in the sun. This is the best life I've ever lived. I grew up in prison. You know, I was never a kid. I grew up in prison.
But beautiful. That's crazy, but beautiful.
You basically caught
my
up
childhood.
on your development in prison.
Right.
Wow.
So you spend 4 years in high risk,
Yeah.
and then the last 6 months they give you a camp. What's the camp?
Yeah, they actually put me on a plane by myself. That was terrifying. I mean, after never even being in a car, you know. And you know what shocked me the most was getting on a plane and looking around at everyone on their phones. Because in prison, like, we're all just friends. We talk. Like, there's no phones or technology. And I'm thinking, these 2 guys haven't even said hi to me. Like, what's up? I want to know who they are, where they're from, what's going on. I'm thinking, I'm interesting. Why are you talking to me? I just got out of prison, you know? I'm just shocked. I'm like, they're on their phones. And
they're playing Angry Birds.
Yeah. I got to California and I got out. I got in with the taxi driver and he goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the prison in Victorville." And he goes, "Why are you going to the prison?" I go, "That's where I'm going to be living." You know?
So they just sent you on your own?
They did. I was so low security. They sent me. It was terrifying. And the guy in the taxi, he goes, "Should I be concerned?" And I said, "We're not that scary, you know?" He goes, "You don't seem that scary." And I said, I did scare a lot of people in prison, though. You know, we just joked. And then when we got there, he goes, "You seem like a really nice person." I said, "There's lots of nice people in prison." And I walked into that camp and I felt like I was the lady there. She's like, "You're so happy." I'm like, "I am so happy. Like, it's good to be here. Nice to meet you," you know? She's like, "People don't come in that happy." I said, "I just did 4 years of high security. Like, this is just a walk in the park."
Yeah.
They had palm trees. I mean, I just left Minnesota, you know? I was happy to be there, so it was cool.
So you do 6 months at the camp with palm trees, and then it's time to come home.
Flip. You have no idea what it feels like to be you're sitting outside. I'm with my closest friends. One of my friends reaches over and said, "Congratulations on becoming an amazing person." And I just start crying because I said, "That's not even what happened. I found out how amazing you guys are. Like, this whole journey, you know?" And then they say your name louder over the speaker. And you're walking out. And my husband's sitting out there in his car waiting for me with flowers, you know? I'm like, I have so much love for this man. I mean, our marriage is so good now because we did this together, and I love Chad, and he's like a superhero, and he took care of our kids, and we did it together, and the world was overwhelming for a while for me, but I knew I didn't want to forget where I'd been, and so I wrote a book, and I speak about it, and I love the women I met in prison. I still write letters. Anyone that gets a hold of me on Facebook or anything else, if you got a kid in prison or a family member, I write them letters. And this is my passion, and it's my future, you know. I found something in prison that I found myself in prison. So
it's a beautiful story of redemption.
It really is. I mean, I'm thinking this needs to be a TV movie. I mean, this is amazing. You know, you found your childhood, you found out inner strength, you found out who you are, and you came out of prison an amazing person.
Thanks.
You know, and there's so many people who will sit in that chair and been on this podcast who said they didn't learn a darn thing in prison. And it was the worst thing for them. Yeah. But I think it was perspective and what they wanted to get out of it. And I think a lot of it goes back to accountability. Yep. Once you took accountability for your actions and your life and realized, that's the crazy thing about addiction, Dr. Matt, is that as addicts, we can spin this web so crazy. And we can point and we can blame and we can make it everybody else's fault. But when you look back after it, you go, I was the one constant.
Yep.
Yeah. I was the one constant in all of this. How could it be that everybody in this world has done me so wrong, did me so dirty, and I can blame everything on that, but I was the one.
You were always there.
I was the constant.
Well, that's where our power lies. You know, once we completely own where we are, which was very painful because I'm sitting in federal prison, I've lost everything. I have to tell my kids, it's me, not them, and my kids are feeling like, no, Mom, it wasn't your fault. They gave you the wrong sentence, you know? And I'm like, no, it was me. And my daughter didn't talk to me for 2 years. She was so hurt because we had built up this story that wasn't true. But what I knew was that we needed to build a new life, and it had to be based on truth. And I was sick and tired of feeling like a victim. I mean, you have no power in your life to recreate your life as long as you feel like someone else did this to me. Once I realized I had done it all, I knew I could create a different future. But it's not easy. I mean, it's definitely not easy.
But it's worth it.
It's so worth it. Yeah.
So you said the marriage is wonderful. He's your superhero.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And I want to meet Chad because Chad seems like a superhero.
He does sound like
he really is exceptional. He's a really good man.
How are the kids doing?
I think the kids are doing really well. It's been 2.5 years of me showing up in their lives and proving to them that I am who I said I was. You know, I have grandkids now. There's a picture of the son that I gave up for adoption. He is such a special person, and his mother and I are really close. We've been able to build that since I got home from prison. I think my family, like my little girl, when I first got home, she said, Mom, because she was 7 when I left, and I was gone for 4.5 years, so she's about 12, and she said, Mom, it was so hard when you left. I didn't think I was going to make it. She said, but then I realized we had a lot to be grateful for, and that's when things got better for me. She said, it was all worth it because you're a lot better mom now than you were. And I was like, I mean, that says a lot for a kid that went without their mom, you know? So I would say all of my kids now, what's really cool is my middle kids. I've got a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old. And we all went to dinner with a couple of girls that their dad's in prison right now that are struggling in high school. And my kids showed them some support and compassion. And they're very aware that other people have it worse than they do. And I think that's really cool too. Like they recognize
Well, that shows a lot of their personal growth that they can turn and give that sort of support to someone else.
Yeah, it's a proud moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super proud.
Well, that's beautiful. Thanks you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. I think it is a story of redemption. I hope that the listeners will really take to heart the fact that no matter how low you are, a person's determination and, as Casey's pointed out, perspective makes all the difference. I've said on the show a lot that our perspective determines our reality. Yep. You know, how you look at something literally determines what your life is like. And I don't know, Casey, do you think you'd have... Casey probably would. I don't know if I would go into prison thinking I'm going to become a better person. I'd like to think I would, but man, what a perspective.
I think it's just, I think you're right, Dr. Matt. It's a total story of redemption. And the thing that gets me is because I'm feeling it right now in my recovery, is that I remember after the accident and thinking to myself, my life will be forever changed.
Yep.
And I was going to be content if my life was never happy again.
Yep.
I just didn't want to feel that way anymore.
Yep.
And I was like, cool. If that's what it is, that's what it is. I signed up for it. I did this, and I'll do this. And I remember sitting in rehab, and they were telling me, now imagine your life in a year. And I did the same thing you did. I wanted to have my kids around. I didn't want for a lot. I just wanted the simple stuff that I had the whole time but didn't realize. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just wanted that. Yep. And now looking today, my life is better than I could have ever imagined. And I'm talking by 100, 1,000 times better than I could have ever imagined. Yep. And if you see somebody who's so dark in their addiction that think life could never get better, please hear my voice.
Yes.
It does get better, and it can get better. And the one thing that you said rings true. It's not going to be easy.
Yep.
but it will be worth it. It's going to be hard, and there's going to be some times that are going to test yourself, but it can get better if you do the work. But you have to do the work.
Yeah.
I think they ought to hear your voice and read your book.
If people want your book, I know you self-published it, and we're going to put a link underneath the podcast and on our Facebook page. It's called Living Louder, A Compassionate Journey Through Federal Prison.
Those words don't go together.
You know what? I've had people that have reviewed that said it's the perfect title. And they can find it on Amazon if they want it. So,
and I think you should. I mean, I think because I've never had somebody so energetic and smile so much sit here and talking about 4 years in high security prison.
Yeah.
And
she didn't even do the stuff that I think you normally do to get into high security.
No.
Yeah. It's
so
crazy.
I think it's great. So they can find it anywhere they find books, Living Louder. And you're going around and you went to the MTC and spoke, and you go to meetings and speak. And
yep. I'm going to be in prison soon. I mean, I'm still on probation until June, and then I'll be in prisons. I actually wrote another book, a curriculum for prisons that we're getting into prisons right now as well. So, but it's happening. I'm going back.
But as a guest,
just for the day.
I won't spend the
just
night.
For the day.
Yeah. But I can't wait. They're my people. Yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, man. I wish we could just keep going on because this...
Right, we could do another hour.
All right, because she is just so amazing and so wonderful and so kind-hearted and so energetic and doing wonderful things. Please go check out her book, Living Louder, A Compassionate Journey Through Federal Prison, Portia Louder. Dr. Matt, any last thoughts?
Just thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for being inspirational. That's one of the things, just going way back, we've been doing this 3 years now. Yeah. I didn't expect to feel inspired after a show like this. I thought, well, we'll do something good to serve the community and share people's stories. But I didn't expect that I would leave an episode feeling uplifted and inspired. And again, that's how I feel today. So just from me personally, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, and thank you for stopping by and listening to Project Recovery. In case you forgot, Dr. Matt, Project Recovery is what?
It's a KSL podcast.
Compassionate Journey Through Federal Prison. Come on.